मम हृदय कंज निवास कुरु कामादि खल दल गंजनम श्री रामचंद्र कृपालु भज मन हरण भव भय दारुणम नव कंज लोचन कंज मुख कर कंज पद कंजारुणम
Hare Krishna. A warm welcome to all of you today on the auspicious occasion of Vijay Dashmi, when we celebrate the victory of Lord Ram over the demon Ravan. On this occasion, we are really blessed to have with us someone who is deeply learned and totally engrossed in the glories of Lord Ram, His Grace Shubha Vilas Prabhu, Hari Bol. While I'm sure many of you have read his books and heard from him before, we would still like to introduce him briefly so that all of us can get to know a little more about him. So, His Grace Shubha Vilas Prabhu is a TEDx speaker. He's a lifestyle coach, a storyteller, and also an author. He studied patent law after completing his engineering degree, but finally he chose the path of a spiritual seeker. Ramayana, the Game of Life, which many of us have heard of, is his best-selling series. He's also the author of Open Night Meditations, Mystical Tales for a Magical Life, and Perfect Love, 5.5 Ways to a Lasting Relationship. The focus of his work is the application of scriptural wisdom to day-to-day life and addressing the needs of corporates and the youth through thought-provoking seminars like the one today. He has delivered more than 4,000 talks, inspiring more than 5 lakh people across 20 countries in the world. He's also a visiting faculty at several premier business management schools in India, including the Indian Institute of Management, or IIM, and the Narsi Monji Institute of Management Studies in Mumbai. He has also been a guest speaker at the prestigious Massachusetts Institute of Technology, which is the famous MIT in Boston, the Dresden International University in Germany, WITS in Johannesburg, and several centers of the Indian Institute of Technology, or IIT, in India. He travels across the globe, counseling and guiding students in corporate houses on leadership, overcoming failures, managing stress, and many other concerns. To know more about him, please visit www.shubhavilas.com, which is his website. We'll be posting it in the chat also. So as I said, we are really blessed to have him with us today on Dashera Day. And the topic for today is understanding Ramayana practically, which, as we said in the introduction, is exactly what he has focused on and spoken about so many times at so many universities. And it also fits so perfectly with the name of our channel, which is Practical Spirituality. Right? So without taking any more time, since I'm sure we're all eager to get started, during the talk, if any of you have any questions, please feel free to post them in the chat and we'll pass them on to Shubha Vilas Prabhu at the end of the class. All right. Shubha Vilas Prabhu, would you please like to take over?
Hare Krishna. Very grateful and happy to be amidst all of you all here today. Though for me, the way I am looking at it is everything is like a Brahman, you know. I can't see who's who. This is the good and the bad part of online platforms. I have been giving lectures practically every single day, almost 2. Today I'm giving 5 lectures literally, you know. Over the past 6 months, I have almost given close to 400 lectures. And in most of the lectures, I can only see camera. I can't see really people. A few days back, I was at Radha Gopinath Temple and I actually saw people in front of me. It was like a culture shock for me after 7 months. I didn't know what to do when people are sitting in front of you, you know. So I'm kind of used to seeing cameras now. But that was just a little funny introduction. But I'm really, really happy to be with all of you here on this most amazing platform of Zoom. And I don't think anybody else is using Zoom more than ISKCON devotees across the world. And today we're going to speak on practical spirituality. But before we start speaking on practical spirituality, I have a really good news to share with all of you. Today, on the auspicious day of Vijay Dashami Dashara, I officially completed the 6th volume of Ramayana. So the Ramayana, the Game of Life series is completed today. And you all are the first group that I'm actually officially declaring it to. So it's a very interesting, and for me at least, it's quite a monumental task, which began about 7 years back. 2013, I started writing it. So it's something I wanted to share also with you all. Okay. So having said all that, I am going to start today's session. And today, you all are in for a big roller coaster ride on the Ramayana today. And for those of you who feel you know the Ramayana, I can assure you by the end of today's session, you will feel that you don't know Ramayana at all. So if by the end of today's session, you are convinced that you don't know Ramayana at all, I'll consider today's session to be successful. So today I'm going to be speaking in the whole context of Ramayana in 3 parts. So first part, I'll be speaking about names of characters of Ramayana and how they relate to us practically in our lives. The second part, I'll be speaking about one incident from the Ramayana and how that incident relates to us in our life. And third part, I'll be speaking about the entire Ramayana and how the entire Ramayana relates to us in our life. So that's the way in which we'll be doing today's session. So the first part about the names of characters in the Ramayana and how we connect with it. So I'm going to share names of many characters in the Ramayana and how each character is present in our own lives. So Ramayana is not a book that is a age-old book. It is a currently relevant book and it's presently applicable book. So in the Ramayana, the main character is Rama. The word Rama means the one who gives pleasure to others. That means the moment you take the name Rama, you feel like smiling. There are some people that come into our life. As soon as you look at them, you feel like smiling. You feel happy. You feel inspired. And in the Ramayana, there's another character whose name is Ravana. Ravana means the one who makes others cry. You will always find some people in your life. The moment you look at them, you feel like crying. So Ram and Ravan are not gone in the past. They are presently available in our own lives also. There are some people who are in your life. The moment you look at them, you feel like smiling. There are some people in your life. The moment you look at them, you feel like crying. In the Ramayana, there is a very interesting personality named Dasharatha. The word Dasharatha means 2 things. The word Dasharatha means Ratha means chariot. And Dasharatha means the one whose chariot moves in 10 directions. The word Dasharatha also means, so in the Upanishads, the word Ratha or the concept of Ratha is compared to the body. So the human body is compared to a chariot, right? And we have 10 senses, 5 knowledge acquiring senses and 5 working senses. So Dasharatha means the one whose 10 senses are under his control. So Dasharatha means the one whose 10 senses are under his control. Dasharatha lives in Ayodhya. The word Ayodhya comes from the word Yuddha. And Ayodhya means the place where there is no Yuddha. Ayuddha. Ayodhya. So Ayodhya is a place where there is no fight. Which essentially means that Ayodhya represents the mind, the human mind. Ayodhya represents a place which is peaceful. That means it refers to the mind that is peaceful. So Dasharath is a person whose 10 senses are under his control and his mind is peaceful. For someone whose 10 senses are under control and the mind is peaceful, to such a person, Ram is born. In such a person's life, God is born. So that means if all of us also have our 10 senses under control and our mind is peaceful, then definitely we can also give birth to Ram in our lives. In Ramayana, there is another personality named Dashanana. The word Dashanana means the one who has 10 heads. It refers to Ravan. But the word Dashanana also has another meaning. That means the one whose 10 senses are out of control. Dasharatha means the one whose 10 senses are under control. And Dashanana means the one whose 10 senses are out of control. And Dashanana lives in Lanka. Lanka is a place where there is no peace. In Lanka, no one sleeps at night. Why? Why people don't sleep at night in Lanka? Now, the Mahabharata explains 6 reasons why people don't get sleep at night. Of course, there is a 7th reason nowadays, mobile phone. If you have mobile phone with you, you don't get sleep at night, basically. That, of course, is not mentioned in the Mahabharata, that I am adding new. So one of the reasons that the Mahabharata speaks about why you don't get sleep at night is that if you have stolen somebody else's property, you don't get sleep at night. And Lanka is filled with stolen property. Nothing in Lanka belongs to people of Lanka. They are all stolen from here and there. And therefore, there is no sleep at night. Now, you might say, in our lives also, we don't sleep at night. In Bombay, nobody sleeps at night at all, It simply means that there is a lot of disturbance in our life, which is why we don't get to sleep at night. So, Dasharatha means one whose 10 senses are under control. He lives in a peaceful place, and in his life, God is born. Lanka, Dashanana means one whose senses are out of control. He lives in a place where there is no peace, and therefore, he doesn't have anything divine born in his life. In the Ramayana, there is another personality whose name is Vali. Vali has a very interesting power. He has the ability to get half the strength of his enemy. So if somebody comes in front of him, half the strength he absorbs. So Vali is like a battery bank, just sucks away your strength. And the interesting thing is, Vali also exists in our life. Now you might say, how does Vali exist in our life? Vali represents temptations in life. All of us experience this. When you come in front of some temptation, your strength becomes half and that object of temptation becomes double strong. Suppose somebody has diabetes, a diabetes patient. If you bring a gulab jamun in front of a diabetes patient, what happens? The diabetes patient's ability to say no becomes half and the gulab jamun becomes double powerful. That represents Vali in our life. So don't think the characters of Ramayana are old and gone. They're still there. Very much in our lives. Ram is there, Dasharath is there, Ravan is there, Vali is there. I just give you 4-5 names of characters. If you analyze every character in the Ramayana, every character represents something in your life. And therefore, I call the series of books that I have written Ramayana, the game of life. Because it can make an impact in your life. It can change the game of your life if you understand Ramayana in this way. So now I'm going to take one incident of the Ramayana and going to analyze it from a life's perspective. Here is a very interesting incident. Just before the coronation of Lord Ram in Ayodhya, there was a lot of chaos that happened, which I wanted to just analyze it quickly. So in Ayodhya, everyone is very, very perfect and pure. But, okay, just to put it in another context, there are 2 types of diseases in this world. Physical diseases and mental diseases. If I may put it that way, people understand it better today, because this is the age of disease. Corona is all over, So there are 2 types of diseases in the world, physical diseases and mental diseases. Physical diseases are sometimes contagious and sometimes not. Like say, suppose somebody has cancer. If you sit next to a cancer patient, it's not that you're going to get cancer. Some diseases are contagious and some are not. But mental diseases all are contagious. You sit next to a person who has a mental disease, you will get it. You sit next to an envious person, you will become envious. You sit next to a person who is very critical, finding faults, you will become like that. So in Ayodhya, no one had mental diseases except one person, and that was Manthara. Manthara was not from Ayodhya, she came from somewhere else. She came from Afghanistan, Kaikaya Desh, basically. So when Manthara had this germ of mental disease of envy in her mind, she spent some time with Kaikeyi. She spent 1 or 2 hours with Kaikeyi and transferred the disease to Kaikeyi. Now Kaikeyi got the disease. What is the proof that Kaikeyi got the disease? She entered into a place known as Kopa Bhavan. In the palaces of the past, there would be rooms for everything. If you want to laugh, there'll be a room separately. You can go there as soon as you enter, you feel like laughing. If you want to cry, there is a separate room for crying. As soon as you enter the room, you automatically feel like crying. The environment of the room is created such that. So she entered Kopa Bhavan and she was lying on the floor with her jewels thrown here and there, her hair disheveled, clothes torn. She was lying on the floor, which shows that she was mentally very disturbed. She was mentally sick now. Dasharath, he came to know that Kaikeyi is in Kopa Bhavan and he entered Kopa Bhavan. So he was thinking that I will be able to help her come out of the disease. A lot of times we are under the impression that we can help others deal with their problems. Ideally, if somebody is sick, what do? You take a doctor along with you. But Dasharath was full confident, I will be able to deal with it. And he went on his own. So when Dasharath entered the Kopa Bhavan and he saw Kaikeyi was like, totally in a mess. Dasharath went and he started talking to her, trying to pacify her. And in a matter of 10 minutes, the scene changed completely. Dasharath was lying on the floor and Kaikeyi was standing up. When Dasharath entered, Kaikeyi was lying down and Dasharath was standing. In a matter of 10 minutes of association with Kaikeyi, Dasharath was lying on the floor and Kaikeyi was standing. That means now Dasharath has got infected by the disease, mental disease. Dasharath is highly disturbed now. When a normal person gets sick, 4 people in the family get sick. But when a leader gets sick, the entire country gets sick. The next day morning, practically everyone in Ayodhya was crying and everyone in Ayodhya was mentally sick now. So when the entire country is sick, 2 people walk out of the country. Sita and Ram, peace and God walk out of that place. When a leader gets sick, an entire country gets sick. And when an entire country is mentally sick, God and peace walk out of the country. Now, the whole of Ayodhya was in a total mess. And there was only one person who was all right. And that was Vashishta, the Rajguru. He was a doctor. So he was the only person who was normal and everybody else was sick. And Vashishta was thinking, so many sick people, how will I treat alone? And therefore Vashishta, he decided to call one more person from somewhere else who was not sick and who was not in Ayodhya. And that was Bharat. Bharat was not present in Ayodhya at that point in time. He was somewhere else in his uncle's house. So Vashishta called Bharat saying that, please come, I need help in treating all these people. So when Bharat came to Ayodhya and he saw everyone was crying in Ayodhya, he was very honest. Now, Dasharath was very overconfident, but Bharat was very honest. Dasharath thought, I can cure her disease, I can cure her mental problem. But Bharat felt, I'm not capable of curing so many people's problem. So he said, there's only one way to deal with this. Take everyone to Ram, to Chitrakoot. So he took every person of Ayodhya all the way to Chitrakoot. And as soon as everyone had darshan of Lord Ram, immediately their mental sickness went away. As preachers, we tend to think that we can solve everybody's problems. But actually the fact is, nobody can solve everybody's problem. The only person who can solve everybody's problem is God. So the best thing a preacher can do is connect that person with God and step aside. God will take care of their problems. And that's exactly what Bharat did. Now, if you see, this one incident we saw from the Ramayana, and we try to analyze that incident in our life. Imagine every episode in the Ramayana can be analyzed in the exact same way. Every single episode in the Ramayana has such powerful relevance to us in our own lives. Now I'm going to analyze the entire Ramayana in our lives context. The Ramayana is primarily in 3 cities. The city of Ayodhya is way up in the north. The city of Lanka is way down in the south. And in between there is a city which is known as the city of Kishkinda. It's in Karnataka, Hampi. So Ramayana primarily takes place between these 3 cities. And these 3 cities represent 3 different mindsets. The city of Ayodhya represents the mindset of Sanskriti or culture. Essentially, culture essentially means that the people of Ayodhya are very, very highly cultured people. The description of Ayodhya that is given, such amazing description. It is said that in Ayodhya, there is no shop that sells locks, and there is no person who gives charity. Now you might say, what kind of a city is this? No charitable people. That's not the point. The point is, why nobody gives charity in Ayodhya? Because there is no beggar only. If there is no beggar, who will you give charity to? So Ayodhya is described as a place where nobody gives charity. And Ayodhya is also described as a place where no shop sells locks. Why no shop sells locks? Because nothing is locked in Ayodhya. Even the treasury of the king is open, but nobody steals. That is the kind of character of people of Ayodhya. But the people of Lanka, their character is exactly opposite. Lanka is the culture or the mindset is that of Vikriti. So Sanskriti means culture, Vikriti means vulture. People in Lanka are like vultures. They just snatch from others. There is no question of culture. There is no question of thinking good about somebody else. They are just only interested in enjoying themselves. Eat, drink, and be merry. That is the philosophy of Lanka. And that also is the philosophy of today's world. If you see, we all follow Nike ad, tick, just do it. That's Lanka's philosophy of life. Just do it. Don't think so much. Bas. Ayodhya, the people of Ayodhya are very grateful people. If somebody does something for them, they remember it forever. In Ayodhya, when Ram and Sita's coronation ceremony was happening, Sita was crying tears. So Ram asked her, why are you crying? So Sita told Ram that during the celebration, during the festival, somebody was throwing colors in the air. And somebody threw red color powder in the air. And Sita immediately remembered the sacrifice of Jatayu. So when Ravan was kidnapping her, Jatayu tried to come and save her. And Ravan, he slashed off the wings of Jatayu, and the blood of Jatayu splashed all over the air. So when the red color powder was thrown in the air, Sita remembered Jatayu's blood and the sacrifice, and she started crying. So imagine she is at the peak of her success, but she is remembering somebody's sacrifice. This is gratitude. This is not a kritagyata. So people of Ayodhya are very grateful people. But people of Lanka are kritagna. That means they have no gratitude at all. Ravan was worshipping Lord Shiva. I mean, he considered Lord Shiva to be his worshipable deity. Very intensely worshipping Shiva. Finally, Shiva appeared in front of him and he asked him, what do you want? He asked for 2 boons. The first boon he asked for was Atma Linga. It was a particular type of Shiva Linga. And the second boon he asked Shiva was, he said, I want your wife Parvati. Now, can you imagine what kind of a person is this? He is asking for Shiva's wife only, What gratitude is this? This is the problem with Lanka. There is no gratefulness. And Kishkinda, which is in between, it's a mindset. The people of Kishkinda, they're known as akritagya. Akritagya means it's not that they are not grateful. It's just that they forget to be grateful. They reminded, they become grateful again. You know, when Ram killed Vali and made Sugriv the king of Kishkinda, he was so grateful to Ram for helping him. And then Ram told him that, now Chaturmas has started, the 4 months of the rainy season. He said, we can't go now to find Sita. So he said, after the rainy season is over, then we will go and search. So he told him, you go back to your kingdom. And then when the rainy season is over, come. So Sugriv said, yes, yes. And he went back. Once he entered his kingdom, he began to enjoy himself. Every day, non-stop party. So Ram is in outside Kishkinda, staying in a mountain in a cave. And Sugriv is inside Kishkinda, inside palaces. And every day party is going on. The sounds from Kishkinda are able to reach outside, So Ram is seeing that this fellow is enjoying a lot. So Ram says, anyway, 4 months, let him enjoy. But the problem with enjoyment is that it's never enough. And the other problem with enjoyment is that it gets over like this, 1 hour lecture doesn't get over at all. But 1 hour movie gets over like that only. You don't even remember how 1 hour gets over. So when you're enjoying, time passes very fast. But when you're suffering, time doesn't pass only. So 4 months just passed like that for Sugriv. But for Ram, 4 months are not passing only. So finally, at the end of 4 months, Sugriv is just not coming. So Ram tells Lakshman, can you go and scare Sugriv a little bit? So Lakshman, he doesn't understand the language of scare and all that. He only understands 2 things. He works in binary, 0 or 1. Either love somebody or kill somebody. Nothing in between, basically. So Lakshman told Ram, should I go and kill him? Ram said, wait a minute, I never told you to kill him. I only told you to scare him. And then Ram actually tells Lakshman how to scare also. How much to scare rather. He tells Lakshman, scare him that much that he comes running to me. Don't scare him so much that he runs away from me, basically. Fear is a very important part of spiritual life. Without fear, spiritual life doesn't work. So all of us need a little fear. But the fear should not be so much that we run away from God. The fear should be, this is called healthy fear, basically. So Lakshman went and scared Sugriv. And then after that, he comes and he becomes completely, he remembers to be grateful and all that. And he does a lot of help. So people of Kishkinda are like us. They are not ungrateful. They only need reminders to be grateful, basically. People of Ayodhya, they have a very high level of integrity. Between brothers, there is no fight at all. If there is a fight between brothers, the fight is not between right and wrong. Ram and Bharat had a big fight. But the fight between brothers in Ayodhya is not between right and wrong. The fight is between what is right and what is more right. Ram is saying, this is right. Bharat is saying, no, this is more right. Ram is saying, no, this is more right. So they are fighting, but look at the reason for their fight. It's not question of right and wrong. There's no wrong in Ayodhya. It's only the difference between right and more right. In Lanka, brothers don't fight. Again, you might see Ayodhya also brothers don't fight. Lanka also the brothers don't fight. But in Lanka, brothers don't fight for a different reason. Because in Lanka, if any brother fights against Ravan, he'll kill them directly. So no fight only happens between brothers. But that fight not happening is not due to love, but it is due to fear. And when fight happens, any kind of fight happens in Lanka, the fight is never between wrong and right. The fight is always between what is wrong and what is more wrong. When Sita was in Lanka, kidnapped by Ravan, Ravan's ministers were telling him, imagine the discussion happening in the court of Lanka. Imagine in the parliament house of a country, such a discussion is happening, So the ministers asking Ravan, Sita is here for 10 months. Why are you not doing something with her? Ravan is saying, I want to do so many things, but what to do? I can't do. I have a curse on my head. If I touch her, if I try to do anything without her sanction, I'll die. So look at the discussion here. The discussion is what is wrong and what is more wrong, basically. And in Kishkinda, in between, the brothers fight. Vali and Sugriv, massive fight. What's the fight about? The fight is about right and wrong. Sugriv is saying, I am right, he is wrong. Wali is saying, I am right, he is wrong. So the fight is about right and wrong. So these are the three countries which represent three different mindsets in the Ramayana. Interestingly, we find in Kishkinda itself, there are three types of monkeys. So the people of Kishkinda are known as Vanara. In Kishkinda, you find three types of Vanaras. The first type of Vanara is Hanumanji type of Vanaras. So Hanumanji type are almost like Ayodhya-vasis. Their mindset is almost like the people of Ayodhya. High character, high integrity, extremely pure. And the second type of monkey in Kishkinda are monkeys like Vali. And their mindset is almost exactly like Ravan in Lanka. Absolutely no difference between Vali and Ravan. You know? One time Ravan had heard about Vali, and he heard that Vali is very powerful. He decided to go and kill Vali before Vali kills him. And he realized that he knows that Vali has this power of getting half the strength of his enemy. So Ravan goes from behind when Vali is doing Gayatri in the ocean, and he decides to catch hold of the tail of Vali, rotate him like that and bang him on the ground and kill him. That was Ravan's idea. But Ravan, as soon as he caught Vali's tail, the tail of Vali went around his hand and it went around all over his body and pulled him. And Vali, he jumped from one ocean to another with Ravan hanging on his tail. Can you imagine Lankeshwar Ravan hanging on the tail of a monkey? And finally, Vali did all his prayers and then released Ravan. And he asked Ravan, what do you want? Ravan told Vali that I am here to become your friend. So he is not here to become Vali's friend. He came to kill him, but he lied. So then Vali and Ravan become friends at that point in time. They actually create a fire and they go around the fire 7 times, sealing their friendship with fire as a witness. And they take vows of friendship. So look at these vows. These are the vows of friendship between Vali and Ravan. Imagine, So they say from today onwards, whatever is mine is yours and whatever is yours is mine. My kingdom is your kingdom is my kingdom. My wealth is your wealth is my wealth. My wife is your wife is my wife. Imagine, So Vali's mindset is exactly like Ravan. There's no difference between the two. So in Kishkinda, there are 3 types of monkeys. One is Hanumanji-like monkeys whose mindset is exactly like Ayodhya-vasis. And then Vali-like monkeys whose mindset is exactly like Lanka-vasis. And in between is Sugriv-like monkeys whose mindset is in between Ayodhya and Lanka. What is Sugriv's mindset? Sugriv's mindset is somewhere in between. Sometimes he behaves like Ayodhya-vasis. Sometimes he behaves like Lanka-vasis. It's like all of us. In the morning, if somebody comes to our house and they see us chanting japa, they will say, wow, these people are from Vaikuntha only, from the spiritual world, And as the day progresses, we slowly start becoming like demons. And by night, we are 100% Rakshasas, 100% demonic mindset, basically. So we are exactly, we can relate to Sugriv a lot. We obviously cannot relate to Hanumanji because he's too good. We can't relate to Vali because he's too bad. But we can relate to Sugriv a lot because 50-50. Sometimes good, sometimes bad, basically. Therefore, the monkeys in Kishkinda are called as Vanara. What is the meaning of the word Vanara? Nara means human. And the word Vanara means, are you human? It's a question. It's a question asked to us, am I? So each one of us, each Vanara in Kishkinda has to ask himself or herself the same question. Am I human? When we look at ourselves in the mirror, you have to ask yourself this question. Vanara, am I human? To the extent I behave like the Lanka-vasis, to that extent I'm a demon or I'm a monkey. And to the extent I behave like the Ayodhya-vasis, to that extent I'm a human being. And therefore, Ramayana is a journey from Lanka towards Ayodhya. We are all somewhere in between in Kishkinda. We have not yet reached Ayodhya, but we shouldn't go lower and reach Lanka by mistake, Therefore, the journey of Ramayana, the most apt place for us is Kishkinda in between. We are not there, but we are not there also. We are right now in between. We have a choice of either going upwards or going downwards. And therefore, Ramayana actually, through this very interesting symbolic way, it asks us some very pertinent questions of life. I'm going to end this description by telling you all one of my favorite stories of Ramayana. I love this story. This story teaches us a very important principle of life. In Ramayana, there is one special category of people, which are called the HNS category. HNS category means hum nahi sudhrenge category. These are people that no matter what, they don't change. Nothing can make them change. So they are called HNS category, hum nahi sudhrenge category. In this category, only one person is there, and that is Ravan. And here is the story of Ravan, very interesting story. So during the just during the war, when Ram's army attacks, Ravan, he goes to Bali Maharaj. Bali is the king of Sutala Loka. And when Ravan goes to Bali Maharaj, he tells Bali, I need your help. Bali Maharaj asks him, you are such a powerful person, why you need my help? Ravan says, see, 2 human beings with a group of monkeys have attacked me, and I'm having some problems. So Bali Maharaj said, come on, when did you start having problems with human beings? Human beings are nothing compared to... He said, see, it's not like that. These they have come with a group of monkeys. The monkeys are really, really troubling me, Ravan says. So Bali Maharaj says, can you tell me some details? So Ravan says, see, 3 monkeys came and harassed me a lot. 1 monkey came and burned my city. Hanumanji comes and burns Lanka. And then he says, 2nd monkey came. Just before the war, Ravan was one time looking at himself in the mirror, and appreciating his own beauty. Suddenly he started feeling wet on his head. And he looked up. Sugriva had taken a tiny form and he was spitting on Ravan's head. Can you imagine? Spitting on Ravan's head. Ravan was so furious. He caught Sugriva. But somehow Sugriva escaped and ran away from there. So Ravan is saying, 1 monkey came and burnt my city. 2nd monkey came and spat on my head and went away. And then he's saying after some time, 3rd monkey came. Just before the war, Ram sent Angad to Ravan to give him the last warning that if you don't return back Sita, then we are in serious fight. So Angad goes, crashes through Ravan's court. Angad doesn't enter normal. He makes a hole in the ceiling, crashes down Ravan's courtroom. And Ravan is bewildered. He asks him, who are you? So he says, I am Vali. I'm the son of Vali. So when Ravan hears the word Vali, he gets bewildered because he has already had a bad experience with the father. He says, the father is so bad, God knows how the son will be. So then Ravan asks, how is my friend Vali? Angad says, your friend is dead. So Ravan gets bewildered. How did Vali die? So Angad says, Ram killed Vali with 1 arrow. Ravan starts laughing. He said, who dies with 1 arrow? In Bollywood movies, 10 bullets also heroes don't die. And here 1 arrow, Vali died. So Angad gives a graphic description. He says, Ram's arrow entered Vali's body just like a pin enters a ripe banana. How difficult it is for a pin to enter a ripe banana. It's very easy, right? So that easily Ram's arrow entered Vali's body. And Angad says, if you don't return back Sita, that same arrow Ram has still. He will kill you also with it. So Ravan is not interested in returning. He says, I'm not going to return. So then Angad says, Tika, I will give you a little demonstration of my powers. He stands on the ground and he tells Ravan, if you really think you're strong, I'm putting my leg on the ground. Shake my leg and show me. Lift my leg and show me. So he kept his feet on the ground. Ravan, he said, I don't touch monkey's feet. He sent his son Indrajit. So Indrajit came. Indrajit is powerful. He has defeated Indra. He came and tried to lift Angad's feet, but he could not lift it. He put all his strength and tried to lift Angad's feet. Just nothing happened. So then Ravan, he himself came and he tried to pick up Angad's feet. No matter how hard he tried, he just couldn't. He used his 20 arms to pick up Angad's feet, but he still couldn't. So Angad said, see, I'll make it easy for you. He said, I'm going to remove my feet, but I'm going to put only 1 toe of my feet on the ground. You remove 1 toe and show me if you're strong. Ravan used all his strength and he could not move one toe of Angad's feet. Ravan was bewildered. He asked him, "What do you drink? Complan D or Bonvita? What is the secret of your strength? Where do you get so much power from?" And Angad tells him, "I chanted the name of Ram and held my breath. And because Ram Nam was inside my body, I became so powerful, I could not even move my feet." Imagine if Ram's name is so powerful, how powerful Ram will be. Angad tells him, "Return back Sita." And this guy says no. That's why he falls in this category, na? Hum nahi sudhrenge category. So Ravan is telling Bali Maharaj, one monkey came and burned my city. Second monkey came and spat on my head and went away. Third monkey came and I could not move his feet also. Bali Maharaj said, "Don't you think you should just return back Sita?" Ravan said, "See, I didn't come to you for advice. I came to you for help. If you want to help, help me." Bali Maharaj says, "Okay, come with me." He took him to the garden of his palace. And in the garden, there was a huge mountain made of pure gold. So when Ravan sees gold, he goes mad. Ravan runs towards that golden mountain. He tries to pick up that golden mountain. And no matter how much he's trying, he's not able to pick it up. He was able to pick up Kailash, Mount Kailash. But here he's not able to pick up this gold mountain. Ravan asks him, "What is this mountain so big?" So Bali takes him to the terrace of his building, very far away. And from far when they see, they realize it's not a golden mountain, it's a golden earring. It is one earring which is so huge. Ravan asks Bali, "Whose earring is this? So huge." Bali tells him, "This earring belonged to Hiranyaksha in the previous Yuga. And Hiranyaksha was such a powerful person that he was fighting against Varahadev, the Supreme Lord Varaha. And during the fight between Varaha and Hiranyaksha, the fight became so intense at one point that Varaha gave one tight slap to Hiranyaksha. Kaan ke niche bajaya wo said, na? He gave one slap to Hiranyaksha, and the slap was so powerful that Hiranyaksha died. But when Varaha slapped him, his earring fell over here. So from that time, this earring is here only, he says, Bali Maharaj says. And then Bali Maharaj tells Ravan, "You were Hiranyaksha in your previous life. And this earring is your earring," he tells him. "But this life, your strength is so less that you can't even lift your own earring." And then he tells him that same Varahadev has come as Lord Ram now. But his strength is exactly the same. And then Bali Maharaj tells him, "Return back Sita." And this guy says no. Therefore, Ravan comes under this HNS category, Hum nahi sudhrenge category. And these are people who, no matter what you give them logic and reasoning, they just don't understand it. Right? So Ramayana, through these such amazing and sweet stories, brings us such wisdom, so profound and so powerful that it has the power to change our life and to completely, change the way in which we look at the scriptures and also understand from these scriptures. Hare Krishna. I'll stop here. We'll take some questions and we can discuss.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Prabhu. This was a very enlightening class. We have a couple of questions in the chat. One question is, how can we take our own journey from Lanka to Ayodhya?
Journey from Lanka to Ayodhya begins with two things. One is we should give up Swartha. The biggest obstacle on our journey towards Ayodhya is selfishness. The more selfish we are, the lesser we progress towards Ayodhya. And the second thing that we need to be able to go towards Ayodhya is we have to be very sincere. Spiritual life depends a lot on our sincerity. The journey from Lanka to Ayodhya is all about our sincerity. When someone is sincerely trying, eventually they'll reach. It is not about your ability. I mean, if it was about our ability, I don't think any of us have the capacity and ability to reach Ayodhya on our own. It is all about our sincerity. We may not have the ability, but if you have the sincerity, we will reach there. Because reaching Ayodhya, you walk one step and Ayodhya starts moving towards you 100 steps, basically. So it's not your capacity to reach Ayodhya, but by your sincerity, the Lord reciprocates and the journey becomes faster. I hope
Thank
it
you.
makes sense.
Yes, yes. Thank you, bro. Another question is, we all have Ravana within us, but while we are trying to minimize this Ravan and working towards our own spiritual journey, how can we deal with the Ravan in others, especially those within our family who have not taken to spirituality?
First of all, considering them to be Ravan is a big mistake. That's why I always say that we um, very rare you'll find demons in our life or around us. So there are two types of people. There are demons and there are weak people. There are demons and patients or weak people. So most people you remember are not demons, but they are patients. They are weak people. They are sick people. So when somebody is sick, naturally they behave weirdly. You know, sick people cough. Sick people are sneezing. Sick people behave. I mean they do all crazy things basically because it's not in their control at all, right? The body is not in their control. So when you find our relatives, friends, family members behaving against our spiritual practices or saying things against our spiritual practices or trying to stop us from practicing spiritual lives, please don't consider them to be demons. Demons are bad and they are really bad, I don't think any of us have come across a demon in our life. And if you have come, you are a very rare person that you have come across a real demon. Most people we come across are sick people. So when you look at a sick person, do you get angry at sick people? Or do you feel bad about sick people? Do you feel compassionate towards sick people? So ideally, you should not get angry at them, but rather you should feel bad for them. So if you are dealing with demons, yes, you should get angry at them. But if you're dealing with sick people, please don't get angry with them. Sick people are going to act sick. So rather than getting angry with them, you should actually feel bad for them that they are so sick. Absence of spiritual desire and absence of spiritual practice is actually a type of sickness. And so only when you realize that you're dealing with sick people, you can show compassion. And you can slowly try to help them overcome their sickness and, as a family progress towards Ayodhya. But if you start treating people in your family as demons, and if you consider them to be Ravan, Hiranyakashipu, and stuff like that, then you really are in big trouble basically because it's very difficult to deal with demons. And if you do have demons around you, please run away. Demons cannot be treated. Demons cannot be changed. They are in this HNS category. But if you find sick people around you, please be compassionate towards them. Please don't give up hope on them. And by love, by compassion, any kind of sickness can be overcome. And I'm sure you would have heard of this, right? All the greatest sicknesses in this world can be overcome by the power of compassion. There is a research, there are so many surveys. There is research that if there is somebody in the ICU, very sick in the ICU, and if one person who is their family member or their friend, somebody whom they love very dearly, just comes and stands next to them, their body parameters start changing. Their heartbeat becomes more normal. Their pulse actually starts, functioning the right way. Their systems actually start regulating just by a person whom they love standing next to them. Therefore, even if somebody is very sick, give them love. And over a period of time, they will overcome their sickness and become the best of devotees, for sure. I hope I answered that question.
Thank you, Prabhu. So we have two questions about the HNS category of people, right? One is kind of, I think, more from a preaching perspective, that when we meet such people, what is the best way to deal with them or get them towards Krishna or something like that. And another is more from a personal application, kind of, that that HNS applies to me also. So how should I improve my practicing Krishna consciousness and come out of it?
So when you come across such people, outside of you, the best way to serve them is by avoiding them. Because the more you try to help them, or the more you try to inspire them, the more they get on your case. They make it really bad for you. That's why if you study the 10 these offenses against chanting the holy names of the Lord, one of the offenses is to preach to the faithless. If you tell the glories of the holy name to a faithless person, that's one of the offenses. Why it is an offense? Because the more you tell these people about the glory of the holy name, the more they offend the holy name, and the more they offend you, offend a devotee. So that means they actually go lower into the rung of devotional ladder, basically. So one of the ways is just stay away from them, so at least they don't offend the holy name. But if you are the person who is in that category, then you have to really work on your attitude. Because the problem with HNS category of people is they have great confidence in their talent. Very talented people. So talent can actually be your biggest enemy. In fact, when I teach in the IIMs and when I do classes in the IITs, I begin my series of lectures with this statement. I say, talent is one of the most useless things you can have in life. And here I'm telling some of the most talented people in the whole world, literally, I'm telling them that talent is the most useless thing you can have in life. Because talent actually helps you a lot as far as some aspects of life is concerned. But talent cannot help you in most places in life. In most places in life, what really helps you is good attitude. Talent helps you reach the bridge of success. Good attitude helps you cross the bridge of success. And character helps you retain that success. And therefore, if you really want to become successful, not in a short run, but in a long run, you need to add good attitude and character into your bucket. Only talent is not going to be enough. So for those who are themselves in the HNS category, I would highly recommend them to add these two elements into their life. Try to develop better attitude in life. And second is try to develop character. The combination of these two really helps retain that success.
Thank you, bro. And one question that I think quite a few of us may have faced, that many times people ask why Lord Ram banished Mother Sita to the forest, although she wasn't at fault. They say that she was repeatedly persecuted despite being faultless. So what is the proper understanding for this?
So this answer is going to take me 20 minutes to answer. But my suggestion to you all is, I have done an entire video on this because so many people have asked me this question, so many. I have done an entire 20-minute video on this. I will share with you all the link of that video. Please watch it. And so if you want to search for it, it's very simple. The title of the video in YouTube, if you want to search, it says Banishment of Sita and Other Tough Questions. Just search for that, on YouTube. Banishment of Sita and Other Tough Questions. And you can search for my name, Shubha Vilas. You'll get this video. If someone can just do YouTube search right now and put the link over here so that everybody can have it, it will be great.
Yes.
So that video will give you 11 reasons. It explores the different perspectives of seeing that incident of the banishment of Sita from different angles. From Ram's angle, from Sita's angle, from Lavakush angle, from the citizens of it. It gives you so many perspectives. So I highly recommend you all to watch that video and share the video as much as you can, because that's a video that gives a lot of clarity on this subject matter.
Yeah, thank you, Broji. I just posted the link in the chat.
Oh, superb. Thank you.
Yeah. And so the next question is how to have Hanumanji as our ideal within
So, if you actually study Hanuman and his personality, I've written 3 books on Hanumanji. I've written the entire Sundarakand of Ramayana. I've written a book called Chronicles of Hanuman, and recently I've written the Hanuman Chalisa. Every word of Hanuman Chalisa explained through stories of Hanumanji. In my research on Hanumanji, after studying Hanumanji's stories, hundreds of stories, and after studying Hanumanji's personality so much, I have one very, very strong understanding of Hanumanji. Very strong understanding. My understanding of Hanumanji's personality is this. He does not live for himself. Why do people worship him so much? Because you will not find one single story of Hanuman where he is getting something. Whatever he does in his life is for others. So if you want to learn anything from Hanumanji, this is one thing we can learn. Trying to be a little more selfless compared to what you are today. If you are 100% selfish, try to become 90% selfish. 10% live for others. 10% of your life, do something for others. If you are 80% selfish, 20% of your life, try to do something for others. So basically, we should try to increase our selflessness quotient. The more we live selfless lives, the more we are advancing towards Hanuman consciousness. Hanuman didn't live a life for himself. He lived a life for others. And because he lived a life for others, Hanuman actually is worshipped across the world. People worship selflessness. People worship those who give hope to others. And therefore, Hanumanji's entry in the Ramayana, if you see, the first time Hanuman enters the Ramayana in the Kishkinda Kand, the very first statement Hanuman tells Sugriv is when Sugriv is scared that Ram Lakshman who are below are sent by Vali. That is when Hanuman makes the entrance. The first statement Hanuman says is, there is no fear on this mountain, don't worry. He's telling Sugriv, don't worry, there is no fear here. So Hanuman's role in our life is to give us hope. How many people are there in our life whose entire life is centered around giving us hope? Very less people. Most people give us misery only. Very less people give us hope. And if anybody is there in life who gives others hope, that person is going closer towards Hanumanji. And therefore, I highly recommend that slightly every single day we should try to advance towards giving others hope and becoming less burdensome to others and living selfless lives as much as we can. That's my understanding.
Thank you, bro. So we have 2 questions about your books. One question, I think, since you just mentioned, someone is asking where the books that you mentioned on Hanumanji, where could we get them? And another question was, where can we get Ramayana with Vaishnava Acharya's commentary?
So, Ramayana by Vaishnava Acharya's commentaries, you will find, so there is some Sri Vaishnavas who have written commentaries, but most of the commentaries are available in Tamil. So if you have understanding of Tamil language, you can find commentaries of Sri Vaishnava Acharyas. There is a book called Ramayana Ratnakar that has elaborate commentaries by Govinda Raj, who is a Sri Vaishnava Acharya. So that book is available in the Tamil language. So you can find that, it's great. It's a little complicated Tamil, basically. It's not the straightforward Tamil that you can find. That is one of the reasons I started writing, because I realized that commentaries are not easily accessible. And therefore, I put all these commentaries together. So what I have done is, I've taken commentaries from Sri Vaishnava Acharyas. I've taken commentaries from Acharyas in Ayodhya. I've taken commentaries both of Tulsi and Valmiki Ramayana and Kamba Ramayana. And I put all of them together along with the storyline of Valmiki, basically, and with life lessons that I have understood. So if you are not able to read Tamil and you're not getting access to the commentaries of Vaishnava Acharyas, then this book has quite a bit of all those commentaries from a practical perspective. So as far as where my books are available is concerned, you go to Amazon.in and you type Shubha Vilas books. You will get all my books at one go. And, and whatever new books get added, it will come in that list automatically, And that is how you can get access to all the latest and the old books also, basically. So before we take up the next question, I want to share one very small thing with you all, because while we still have the time and all of us are there together, I'm actually this coming weekend, which is next Friday, I'm going to do a workshop on. It's called as the workshop on self-acceptance. So it's one of the most powerful workshops that I'll be doing. I've done a couple of workshops in the past, but this is a workshop that I highly, highly recommend all of you all to attend. So basically, I'll tell you what I'm going to do in this workshop. Each one of us are having an identity crisis. I came across so many devotees from across the world, and so many even non-devotees who are struggling a lot with self-identity, with self-image, not able to understand who they are, what their potential is. So all of us need somebody who can help us identify our potential. Just like Hanuman had Jambavan who helped him identify his potential. And after Jambavan helped him identify, he became like a hero, practically, So we need someone who can help us identify what our latent potential is. And unfortunately, the way the world is, it does not help us identify our potential. And usually, we live a life of comparing ourselves with others, comparing our weaknesses with somebody else's strength. So this workshop is meant for all those people who are facing any kind of low self-esteem, any kind of insecurities, any kind of comparative mindset, any feeling stuck in life, not able to progress, And for anybody who somehow or the other feels that I don't know what the purpose of my life is. Of course, the purpose of life is to go back to Krishna only. But while we're living in this world, what do? So a lot of people have a lot of potential, but their potential is underexplored. So this workshop, through scriptures, through a lot of wisdom from our epics, and plus with modern understanding of psychology, is a powerful tool to help people overcome the inertia and look for higher potential in life. So for anybody who wants to be a part of this workshop, you are most welcome to join. I don't know how to give you all the link to it, but I'm sure the organizers of Practical Spirituality will find a way to share the links with you all. So I highly, highly recommend you all to be a part of this workshop. If I'm not mistaken, if Preeti Mataji is on this group, if you can just put your number, where they can contact in case they want to be a part of the workshop, that'll be great. Yes, anything else? Any other questions or comments, please?
One last question, Project. Somewhat related to the workshop that you were just talking about, perhaps, and also because I think in the beginning we said about mental sickness, right? And how that particular incident of the Ramayana relates to mental sickness, right?
Can you repeat? The voice is very low. If you can repeat, please.
Hare Krishna. Can you hear me now, Project? Yeah. So I said we have one last question, which is, I think, related to in the beginning of the class when we spoke about how Manthara affected Kaikeyi with her mental sickness, and eventually how Ayodhya got like the entire Ayodhya got affected, right? So along those lines, someone is saying that I'm a neurologist doctor, and many devotees, single and couple, come to me with psychological and mental issues. Even though I'm not a psychiatrist, but these devotees are hesitant to go to psychiatrists. So how should I help them? And at the same time, I shouldn't get affected as I know my limitations and I am not Bharat Maharaj.
Perfect. So my understanding is this. As far as dealing with people, even devotees who are having very strong psychological problems, is that you have to know whom you can help and whom you can't. I'll tell you honestly, I've been dealing so many years with kind of people who are having intense psychiatric issues, basically. And I realized that it's not always my capacity to help them. There are some people you can help, pull them out to at some point, but there are some people who are just beyond our ability to help. You should know when it is possible and when it is not. Because when it reaches the level of psychiatry, or when a person really becomes beyond repair, I don't advise people to get into it unless they are actually psychiatrists professionally. So I advise people to go to a psychiatrist to get treated for some time. And when they get treated a little bit, then you can pull them out later. But again, as I said, it's up to one's experience to be able to know how much to do and how much not to do. Because people who are having mental illnesses, especially those who are long-term mental illness, it is not easy unless you are an expert, you know. So do not try solving, the problems if it is at that level. But yes, I have also seen people who are having very strong mental illnesses getting changed by one very important principle. I'll tell you a simple story, and this is a true story that happened in Maharashtra in a place called Nigadi. So Nigadi, there is one Goshala. There's one Goshala in Nigadi, and there's a person who works in the Goshala. He's a very simple guy, you know, but somehow while running this Goshala, at one time he came across one madman who was roaming around in the streets of that town. So this man, what he did was he just picked him up and brought him to the Goshala. So this person who runs the Goshala, he does a lot of this. So he picks up a lot of cows that are on the streets and brings them to his Goshala and takes care of them and, you know, nourishes them. No matter what, he takes care of them till their last stage, literally. So this time he picked up a human being who was on the streets, and he was like a complete mad person, basically. He picked him up and brought him to the Goshala. Obviously, you know, you can't expect anything from them. But somehow this mad person, while living in this, in the Goshala, slowly started doing some seva, basically. Slowly he started trying to do some service to the cows. And slowly, you know, started brushing the cows slightly. And over a period of time, in a matter of few months, this mad person completely became normal. Completely. He was a mad person roaming around the streets like that. But he became completely normal just by serving cows. And after this man saw this transformation, he started picking up many more mad people on the streets. And actually, a lot of them became transformed and became completely normal just by serving cows. So this is one very powerful way in which I realized that a lot of people can get treated. And that is by doing some seva. Obviously, we should know whom to give and whom not to give this. That discrimination we should have. But I'm just giving you an additional idea of how, you know, we can really connect with people at this level also. So I hope I answered that question
quite thoroughly, Prabhuji. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you so much. And thank you for the entire enlightening talk today and for showing us how right from the micro level of individual characters through incidents all the way to just looking at the Ramayana as a whole, at all levels, how we can see and analyze and understand how the Ramayana is relevant in our lives, and for showing us how Ramayana is basically a journey from Lanka mentality to Ayodhya mentality, right? And bringing out the differences in the culture so beautifully. Thank you so much. And we are seeing quite a bit of interest in the chat for your workshop, Prabhuji. So just for everyone's information, we have posted the link to our WhatsApp group, the Practical Spirituality WhatsApp group. And please join over there, and we'll be sure to post details about the workshop and how to access it over there. And to learn more about Shubha Vilas Prabhu, please visit his website. And for many more such workshops and many more such speakers giving talks, please connect with us on all of the platforms where we are available: YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, right? All links have been provided in the chat box. So that's it for today's webinar. Thank you so much, Shubha Vilas Prabhu. Thank you everyone for attending. And
very grateful to all of you all for your enthusiastic participation, and very grateful to the organizers of Practical Spirituality for having invited me here. And it's been a pleasure to be with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you. You made our Dashara more spiritual today. Thank you.